Hello, friends. Today is going to be sort of a part two to the sin, confession, and projection video. A term that I have come up with and mentioned to you guys on Sunday, as well as that I use in my new book, The Unnamed Kalyana Way, coming out in a couple of weeks from the time of this recording, is that the spiritual journey is a transbiological endeavor, meaning that all of the genuine spiritual traditions, most particularly the experiential ones, the transformative ones, call the sojourner or practitioner to a transcendence of conditioning, of relativity, and of various biological functions that we are taught that we need or need to feed in a certain way. It's important to take a note from Ken Wilber in that he says to not only transcend, but to also include. So, to be mindful as we begin transcending biology and conditioning and relative meaning, to not disconnect as long as it's relevant. So, include the essence of the body while it's being upgraded and transcended. Include the essence of cultural context in which you find yourself while it's being transformed and transcended and upgraded. So, for example, three very prominent biological functions that across the board the traditions ask us to at least look at beyond mere animalism are sex, food, and sleep. And it's possible, and I am currently experiencing a transcendence and includence and transformation and upgrading of all of these. And it's one of the most profound experiences of my life. All of that was not to say that we're going to go into that conversation in this video. It was to set the context for another term that I would like to introduce So I say the spiritual journey is a transbiological endeavor. It's also a transpsychological endeavor. A more common word that you may have heard is transpersonal. The term transpersonal psychology has become quite popular. And that gets at, but is not exactly what I'm talking about when I say transpsychological endeavor. Again, all the traditions have some version of it. I'm just using my words and my own direct experience to express it to you. As always, in what I'm sharing and teaching, I'm asking that you remember all of the 5 basics and all of their parts, which is why it would be important that you read my book coming out in a couple of weeks, because it's the most comprehensive to date explanation of what I'm talking about. So even if I'm hitting one, highlighting a particular basic in a lecture or a video or what have you, couch it in the others. Don't forget the others. So the sin, confession, projection conversation, and this being part 2 of that, sort of falls under the taking responsibility category. But today, I'm going to bring in the ultimates category as almost equally important in the conversation of projection, if not more important. So last video I did mention the ultimates a little bit, but mostly, and this is important as well, I was speaking from the perspective of you being a finite self that has unresolved tension and are projecting it out for it to be reflected back. And you have the opportunity to either believe that the other person is causing you suffering, or you can see that anything that bothers you has a direct correlation with something in yourself that you theretofore have been unwilling to look at. So as you see, that's kind of 2 layers. And if we want to bring our bullseye analogy back to the picture, it's a couple of layers removed from the center being the ultimate, the center being forgiveness of sins. Somehow, in the magic mythic Christian world, I remember back in the day, there would be this kind of idea that God gives us free will to disobey him. But he's always there waiting for us with open arms when we turn around and come back. Could we upgrade that, considering what we're talking about, in a more first-person experiential way? Somehow we have this capacity built into the human experience to choose which layer out and out and out and out away from the center we want to identify with and as. Ultimately, of course, it's impossible to totally disconnect from the source. You couldn't be here without it. That's why it is always already there and waiting with quote unquote open arms when you turn around. That's just kind of poetic language to describe it because it's such a good feeling to return there. But somehow you can siphon off the direct taproot into the bullseye, into your true self, into your ultimate self, into I amness, into union with God or the beloved. And start to believe that you are a personality self. Start to believe that you are a product of your environment only. Start to believe that everyone is out to get you. Start to believe that your own anger is someone else's fault. So you have free will to do that because, in a very mysterious sense, God or ultimate emptiness or I amness itself, the great nothing, wanted and still wants, apparently, to experience itself as every possible multiplicity and facet in the known and unknown universe and universes. And that's what it does. Projects and reflects, projects and reflects, projects and reflects. And in each of those projections and reflections contains holographically the whole of that one or no one. But somehow you there who are listening to me have a center of gravity, a finite sense of relative identity and awareness, looking this way, listening over here, interpreting these words, thinking, which in and of itself is a relative kind of fractal shard that can trace its way back to the ultimate singularity of consciousness. Ultimate awareness. Ultimate I amness. You can trace that strand back right now in your experience to quote unquote turn around, disidentify from the relative little contracted self, looking around, looking around, looking around, relating to the world, reacting to the world, believing yourself to be the body mind, and return to the arms of God right now. And the term always already is appropriate, just like in that Christian analogy, because you see, it never left. You never left you, but somehow the identifier principle got caught up and was allowed to, and perfectly so, and was somehow part of the process, part of this whole grand scheme, display, picture, painting, movie, matrix. And so you remember your koans in the ultimates. I am the only one aware of anything, including all of these things in the outer rungs of the bullseye. Mind, personality, emotions, body, other person, outside world. All of that is only arising in your awareness. And sometimes I put in parentheses, everything arising has only ever arisen in my awareness. But that implies a past. At the same time, it's helpful to kind of think back. Oh yeah, everything I can remember arising only in my awareness. So then you swipe the parentheses away and remember the other koan, that past and future don't exist. Past as a memory happens only now in my awareness here. Future happens as a projection only now in my awareness here. And then you bring in the other koan that reminds you, I am aware of the body, therefore I am not the body. I am aware of the mind, therefore I am not the mind. I am aware of Kemper, therefore I am not Kemper. To be careful that the ego doesn't take over when you say, I am the only one aware of anything, and identify as the relative self. Because then if you're reminded, oh, I'm not the relative self, then who am I? That's the only one aware of anything, and confirm it directly in your experience now. Get a feel for what is arising in your awareness now. Slow it down for a moment. You can even start, as I am here, with your hands folded in your lap, or your legs crossing, or the tip of your nose. Just the fact that you can observe part of the body, even though you can't observe all of it without a mirror, which that in of itself is kind of a mind blower. Talk about projection, reflection. Arising in my awareness. For the next couple of minutes, scan your awareness for what's inside of it. And either out loud or interiorly, say, blank is arising in my awareness. You could even put the word only in there. The computer screen is arising only in my awareness. Trees outside are arising only in my awareness. And then you can take it interiorly. Thoughts are arising only in my awareness, and even a little more subtle. Ideas are arising only in my awareness. Meaning is arising only in my awareness. Past and future are arising only in my awareness. Such and such other person is arising only in my awareness. Continue now while I have a little bit of coffee. And if that's true, let the implications of such sink in. Take your own words seriously. What would it mean? Again, as long as you're being aware not to be operating from the ego or from a relative place or an irresponsible place, because remember, this is taking responsibility and the ultimates combined. What would it mean if all of this is only arising in your awareness? And not only that, but it's only arising in your awareness in this moment. Even 2 minutes ago, when we began this little exercise, is a memory in the past arising in my awareness now. The inevitable conclusion is ultimately no exterior others exist in their own autonomy outside of your cooperation and awareness of them. It also means you are all there is. It's very paradoxical and tricky to even be making this video and using the word you. There's a Hafiz poem where he says something like, God is continuously laughing at the word to, TWO. In the same way, God is continuously laughing at the word you. Who am I aware of you? in some projected future, who are you aware of me? And who is me? Is not Kemper to you a projected idea in your mind field based on conditioning, based on belief, based on past future? You're it. This entire experience is currently, right now, being projected from your ultimate inner light of awareness, not much different from a movie screen and how it works in the movie theater where you see the light coming from the window up above. There is no exterior world outside of your awareness. Hence the other koan, within, without, without. Where is the tree arising? Where is your name arising? Where is past future arising? Where are sensations arising? Where is your body arising? All in the same immediate direct place. And it's kind of unnameable, but we say here, now, for convenience. Can't even say it, but it's all the same place, projected on some screen. From the ultimate place, there is no unresolution. There is no conflict. There is no other. The field is populated with objects, yes. Don't get me wrong. Just when we say something is an illusion, doesn't mean can't experience it or not there. It just means illusion. So when I say there is no other, it means the so-called other is arising only in my awareness. Now, here's the reason that we're calling it a transpsychological endeavor. And the reason that we're combining taking responsibility and the ultimates. If you have siphoned off your connection to source and in your free will, quote unquote, turned your back on God, become a sinner, operating as though you were a limited, finite personality, body, mind, self, whether a false self or a full self, to use my terminology, Whether you're healthy and vibrant and happy, or unhealthy and unhappy and depressed, doesn't matter. Still, that one operates in the same field as all the other objects. So when free will allows you to move into the playing field and be on level playing ground with your center of gravity identifier as equal to all the other illusory objects, then the rules of that field apply. Cause and effect, duality, project and reflect. And somehow in that step down of losing yourself, you believe that there's such thing as an other. So that's where part one of this mini series is important. If you're operating from there, it's good enough to remember. And this is where kind of cliche pop culture, psychology, and spirituality comes into play, and like healthy, productive communication skills with an other, with a friend, with coworkers, with a spouse, what have you, is to take responsibility and remember, oh, it's not you, it's me. And remember, like I said last time, whatever bothers you about an other the most, whether it's someone you know or a politician or something in the world or anything. Speaking of which, that one is usually misunderstood as like, how do you know that it's other? Oh, well, it's outside of myself. Well, how do you know it's outside of yourself? It's just because it's beyond this body or something, because it's like over there. But again, when you're in that field, in the outer layers of the bullseye, then spatiality and time and duality exist, and you operate as such accordingly. And from that perspective, how it works is whatever is unresolved in your relative body, mind, persona self on any layer exists as what I call a nexus knot. It's kind of a coagulation of energy, fascia, muscles, thoughts, all bound up into this little hub, command center that the ego can infiltrate, take up residence, and operate from. It also becomes a sub-personality, so that's another kind of layer of hell, we might say. Beneath the personality, there's a sub-personality that's hiding under the covers and gets triggered. And if you're not keen to it as that one, you will think that some other thing outside of yourself triggered it. Meanwhile, it's just a flip of that. That little nexus knot is some sort of holographic magnet. And in the new age kind of world, and even like when we talk about karma and the law of attraction and that sort of thing, it's what it's talking about, but that's tainted by reward punishment and that you did something wrong. And therefore, those teachers are coming from that place themselves, because from the ultimate place, you didn't do anything wrong because you are not that. But in and of itself, that realization should not be taken too far, transcended without including and disconnecting from taking responsibility. Oh, I'm just not that. I'm just not that. I'm just not that. That's why all the basics apply, because eventually that will come back up and bite you karmically. In any case, it just works like that. That persona body mind, with that nexus knot of fear, anxiety, anger, jealousy, lack, deficiency, hatred, anything like that, unresolved, trauma, will continue magnetizing situations and events outside of itself, as I say, because the benevolence of this place wants you to see it, wants you to have a reminder. The next invitation and reminder is that you are not even that, and to drop back even into the ultimate, but that rarely happens. I'm going to get back to that in a moment. But if you're not keen to this work, you'll think that other person or that other thing or that other event happened and triggered you and made you angry. No, it revealed the anger that was already there. It revealed the rage that was already there. And that's where yoga is great practice. Meditation, there's another basic, perfect, beautiful practice. Even some sorts of talk therapy, psychoanalysis, to talk through it and to re-own it, to not become a victim. But if you're operating that playing field, you don't realize the truth, not only that it's unresolved in yourself, and what bothers you most about that thing can be found in you, and there's this sort of magnet that's making it happen over and over and over and over again, and that's just how it works, and will continue looping and looping and looping until that gets resolved. And it can get resolved through practices, yoga, meditation, this work, the basics, etc. You can even drop back into the ultimate, and as you're operating from that place, still existing kind of 1 foot in the relative realm, and it'll still keep going. And you're just kind of, well, I'm the ultimate, I am not that, but it still keeps happening, still keeps happening. I'm even going a deeper layer than that. Often in that playing field, actually always in that playing field, we are constantly manipulating reality, manipulating the so-called exterior world, usually because we deep down know that that nexus knot is there, yet we're afraid to face it, and we're afraid to feel the consequences of it being triggered. And we know what kind of people and what kind of situations and what kind of events trigger it. We think that those people and events and situations are operating autonomously on their own and making us feel a certain way. So there's this phrase that's like surrendering your authority, surrendering your autonomy. Take back your autonomy, take back your authority. When I say that, I'm talking ultimately. When a lot of teachers say take back your authority, take back your autonomy, they're still talking about the relative self. Stand strong in your masculine power, or be a feminine goddess, or something like that. Stand your ground. It's still believing that there's something to stand your ground against, still believing that there's something to fight, still believing that there's a reason to need to be strong. So we manipulate the world to make sure that person doesn't act a certain way for the only reason that we don't want to feel what it feels like in ourself, which, back to the original point of that, because it's only arising in your relative self. That relative realization that what that person is doing is in myself is a relative fractal of the ultimate, that it's only arising in myself. Fractal, 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 all the way down into however many layers of outer rungs of hell you want to go, and sin of believing you are not, believing you are not, believing you are not, or believing you are, believing you are, believing you are, into contracted ignorance and suffering. So one step of the work, and something you can do if you have a partner or somebody you're kind of in this journey with, in taking responsibility, and something Christy and I do and have turned up the knob even more lately on each other, just to let you know that I do the work just as much as I ask you to. And Christy and I are definitely on this journey individually and together. This is another reason why the monastic tradition really understands there are certainly hermits and kind of solo monks, but mostly monks are on a solo journey together in a community. And the word monk itself comes from the Greek monos, which means one, or solo, single. So even if you're in a partnership, even if you're in a community, it's still only always for you. And especially if you're super close to somebody, it's easy to get entangled and emotionally kind of compromised, believing that that other person is responsible for you. Now, again, this gets taken overboard, in my opinion, in some kind of new age pop culture, psychological, spiritual circles. Like, I don't need anybody. From the ultimate place, there is nobody. That's the point. Even when you realize the ultimate, it as yourself is still expressed in and as and through all of this. So again, as I've said in the non-GMO enlightenment video and others, the body is still here, but it's transformed. The mind is still here, but it's transformed. Kemper is still here, but it's transformed. The world is still here, but it's transformed. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, he says, kind of like when you realize the ultimate or samadhi, then the pure light of the object of awareness can shine through unhinderedly. Think about that. It's sort of like objects still exist, but when subject-object boundary disappears, when you no longer believe the object to be separate from yourself, when you no longer put your identity in the object, when you no longer react to it as though it were doing something to you, and when you no longer experience it through your own filters of wounding and opinion and conditioning, this is why it's transpsychological. transpersonal, going beyond the limited relative self and meaning and limitation. We're always relating to our subconscious projections as reflections from other people. We're always relating to other things through our own many-layered lens. Therefore, another fractal that says you are all there is you're only ever interacting with yourself. You're the only one here. You're only ever talking to yourself. You're only ever hearing yourself when an other is talking to you, when I am talking to you here. There's a way in oneness, ultimate oneness, singularity of consciousness, one without two, I without you. To experience and hear and see and feel cleanly and clearly. Back to what I was saying about taking responsibility in a relationship, for example. It's important to be clean and clear in your own responses, in your own self, and that requires work. That requires what I just said, dismantling the subpersonalities, the shadow, the ego that is usually the one that's speaking, but you don't know it. So you've already projected into yourself a few times before it even reaches the outside. So you're a few layers removed from the truth, even relatively. You're operating from a shadow of a shadow of a shadow of an ego of a subpersonality of your personality, of your relative self, of the ultimate, right? The work is profound. But if you can be clear, not need to defend, not need to take back your autonomy like that, to know you're always already free and one as yourself, perfectly so. Speak the truth and not speak your truth like that. I hope you hear the subtleties here. Speak clearly, interact, relate clearly, and especially if that person is in the work with you, as Christy and I are, then if that pings them in a certain way, that's their work. You can support them, but you no longer have to be afraid of their reaction, because being afraid of their reaction is manipulatory. So you don't say what you mean, you don't do what you meant to do. Compromise constantly. For fear of what? For fear of what they think. And why is that? Because you have an unresolution in yourself and an ultimate lie about separation, that there is an other that could possibly think something against you to affect you in a certain way. That's why conditioning and convention around family, around marriage, around religion, around culture, around everything, politics, has to go out the window. Again, this is not to say irresponsibility. This is to say, now is all there is. Everything is arising only in your awareness, in my awareness. And each relationship, each interaction with a human or an animal or a tree or a car or a TV show or this video or anything is for you And you don't have to compromise anything. It's unique unto itself in the moment because past and future don't exist either. How it was last time. That's also the forgiveness of sins for another person. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Why? Because love is in the present moment. And if you hold somebody to the past, that's an unresolved nexus knot in yourself that will magnetize them to appear and repeat the same thing and make you feel the same thing over again. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong. Hall of Mirrors. Don't ask me why it works that way, but it's pretty cool. It does work that way. So what I'm saying is take it even further back to your own forgiveness of sins, to your own forgiveness of the illusion in the first place. That's Jesus in A Course in Miracles language. Forgive the illusion and forgive yourself for believing in the illusion. Return to your own wide open arms. And so, as that singular and whole unto yourself, as yourself, with this whole populated world, you are clearer, your system is clearer, your seeing is clearer, your hearing is clearer. Your feeling is clearer. Again, remembering all the basics and that it's a process. And just because you pull the plug and step back and have these kind of flashes, there's still a lot of unwinding to do on the relative because the relative relatively still exists, even if it's seen as an illusion. And just when it's seen as an illusion doesn't mean it goes away, doesn't mean it stops operating in the same way. It just means you're operating from a different place while the unwinding is happening and while the two are becoming one. Ramana Maharshi says, the world is an illusion. God alone is real. God is the world. So when you pull back, transcend, but also include without severing your identity center of gravity into the ultimate, always ever present awareness, you can trace the string all the way back right now. If you've lost it, if you've been sinning this whole time and operating from a body mind only, then let me remind you. Have a minute or so of filling in the blank. Blank is arising only in my awareness. And you can add the word now here at the end. Blank is arising only in my awareness now here. Blank is arising only in my awareness now here. There are no exterior objects. They all arise within. There is nothing without my awareness. Within, without, without. In this place, there is no fear. In this place, there is no harm. There is no need to protect, deflect, project. But at the same time, that sort of spontaneous, intelligent, conscious singularity, inner light of awareness, is projecting all of this. And it'll be there as long as it's relevant. But the sting is no longer there. This is also the immortal, undying, unborn place. You do not die. You live eternal life. So remembering all the basics, remembering all the koans, remembering how they all interweave. Let this information integrate and naturally begin to inform how you interact with the world and yourself and your projections. As I said, if meditation is the key, the ultimates are the gateway, projection work, it's probably the most profound. What does it mean then to care for another? To be present with another? To forgive another? To love another? And as you can see, there are different layers that you can take this. I'd like to invite you to try them all and take it all the way to the ultimate. Namaste.